I'm going to throw a theory at you, and you just answer it.
Great.
Now, I don't like non-Power 5 teams.
That's true, and I'm actually with you on that one. I'm an elitist as well.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
But this is a little different year.
Okay.
That we have one great team, Georgia.
Yes.
And then we got about 7, 8. I'm like, depends on the Saturday.
Yeah.
I like Michigan. I think Oklahoma State's underrated, but I like. And so in a year, I thought about this driving in today with my swollen cheek. I thought, this is a year, let Cincinnati in. We don't have. If Bama was great, if Ohio State I thought was great.
Let them eat cake?
Let them eat cake. But you know what? This year, there's cake. There's enough cake for a non-Power 5. And I think they did beat Notre Dame.
They did.
Let them in if they go undefeated.
And remember, Notre Dame has not lost much in South Bend over the last few years. Not even Clemson could go up there and beat them. I believe that the last game that they had lost in South Bend was Georgia.
By a point.
So it's tough to win there, and they went in there and did that. They beat a Notre Dame team that I don't know if Notre Dame is as strong as those previous seasons.
They're not.
But
they beat them.
They beat them.
There.
And that needs to matter. I don't mind your theory. I think that at this point, there is a pretty plausible road to the playoff for a lot of teams, more so than normal, than previous years at this stage in the season. I think that there's a plausible road for Cincinnati. That's pretty obvious. Yeah. Obviously, the 4 teams that are already in there. Obviously, plausible for Michigan State and Michigan. I think that you could see a scenario where Oklahoma State goes in. Yeah. There's a scenario where Wake Forest works.
No, come on.
I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. There's still a plausible road for Oklahoma, even as far down as they fell. Just because of this fact, Alabama is all or nothing at this point, I believe. Now, we haven't for sure seen what the committee will do with a potentially 2-loss Alabama team. But in my estimation, a 2-loss Alabama team, a non-SEC champ Alabama team would be left out of the playoff.
I totally agree.
So that means that they either have to run the table,
or they're out.
Arkansas, Auburn, and Georgia, or they're out.
I totally agree.
So it's all or nothing. They're either going to be the number 1 seed and Georgia will be 3, or they're going to be out.
That's right.
The Big Ten champ, so long as there's only a 1-loss Big Ten champ, right? So if Ohio State's that 1-loss Big Ten, or Michigan State,
right,
they'll occupy a spot.
Okay.
So then it comes down to, does Oregon beat Utah twice? See, so basically there's 2 spots open.
That's right.
There is a really plausible road for Cincinnati if they're able to beat SMU and go on and win their conference championship.
Oregon lost to Stanford. I don't want to hear belly aching.
And they're going to have to beat Utah twice.
All right. Let's go to my second thing.
Let's see. Let's hear it.
Okay. So when you go to college, a fine university like Michigan or Michigan State, it's not just your GPA. It is not just your test score. It is, what did you overcome? Did you have a summer job? Was it an easy
You're
road?
saying for admission.
For anybody on a great college campus. It is not just, she had the highest GPA, she gets in. Well, if she went to a prep school and we consider there's nuance to admissions.
Okay.
We know that. There's nuance. So when Michigan State beats Michigan, I hear a lot of this from Sparty fan base. And they love me, by the way. But I hear this from them. Well, we beat them. And I'm like, time out. It's the best loss in the country this year was Michigan's loss to Michigan State. It's to a rival. It's on the road. You were rolling them in the second half, and statistically, you dominated them, and you lost. But Michigan State got so high for its rival, the next week they get rolled by Purdue, and that the head-to-head matters. But when it was as good a loss, I have no problem Michigan being a slot an inch ahead of Michigan State. We can't.
I think that's crazy.
It can't all be GPA. Otherwise, what about kids that come from tougher families? How do they get into school?
Yeah, but you're conflating something that does have nuance to something that doesn't, which is a scoreboard and 60 minutes in which you play the game and there's a winner and a loser. So you're talking about admissions in terms of a subjective criteria across thousands of applicants in which some percentage will get accepted and some will not. That's not what the sports world is. The sports world is a game, and there's a winner and a loser. There is black and white. So I hear this, and Gary Barta, the AD of Iowa, who's the chair of the playoff committee, said this a night ago. He said, watching the game aside, statistically, Michigan is just far superior to Michigan State. But here's what all of you elitists fail to realize, is that all of these statistics and this analysis is only projecting who could win the game or who would win the game. In this case, we have an actual winner and a loser.
But it's not
so I don't care how it happened or what statistically is happening.
You don't care.
They have the same record. They played on a field. Michigan State won.
Yeah. One team doesn't have a humiliating loss.
This notion is an interesting notion. I would
scoreboard.
I would argue that this happens far more often than you would think. Remember, Purdue got Iowa the week after the big emotional Penn State win. Bang, gets Iowa the next week. Purdue gets Michigan State the week after a big emotional win against Michigan. Bang. Remember Iowa a few years ago. Ohio State had beaten Penn State in an unbelievable game. Saquon Barkley took back the opening kick. They come all the way back. JT Barrett. Ohio State wins next week. They go out to Iowa. Bang. They get beat by like 30 points. It happens, right? So I'm not going to fault Michigan State and say Michigan is better than you because some of statistical analysis. I saw the stats. It was the scoreboard where Michigan State won.
All right. Third topic. So this is maybe it was always like this. And I'm just, this is recency bias, but it does feel like we live in a world now, and I think a lot of this is based on social media, where there are these avalanches and momentum starts, and you find very competent people fighting for their life or their job or their reputation or their legacy. So y'all wanted Brian Kelly out, not you. He's the best hire since Lou Holtz. I could argue since Ara Parsegan. Y'all wanted Harbaugh out. Oh, he's going to win his 10th. He's going to have his fourth 10-win season. Today, y'all want Sark out. Like, Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe his first year.
He did.
The first year I did this show, I couldn't get my hair right. You're building a culture.
Remember that.
Remember the set? The set was I sat here, and the peasants sat somewhere on the floor. Okay,
you did.
I couldn't get my hair in the set
hair
right.
was an issue.
Okay, so today...
Now it's better. You found the recipe.
Look at this thing. It's like a perfect helmet. So today, Chris Del Conte, who's probably the best AD in the country, you'd argue.
He's pretty good.
He said, listen, I'm not making excuses. But he came out and he said, 52% of our 2018 class and almost 50% of our 2019 class, they're no longer here. This is a rebuild.
Yes. And
I'm defending Sark. You want to run him off. All these guys you want to run off are doing pretty well.
You are big into analogies. Let me make one for the Texas situation and Steve Sarkisian. And before I make the analogy, I would state, I think Steve's a remarkable coach. He's a very good coach. Everywhere he's been, he succeeded outside of a small point in time in which he was having massive personal issues, which he has admitted and faced head on.
Yeah.
Everywhere else he's been, he has succeeded and done so on a pretty good scale. In particular at Washington, when he took over a team that was 0-12 and built them into the team that Peterson then took to the playoff.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the analogy. If you're searching for a home, everyone talks about move-in ready. And you want to go and you want to buy a home that's move-in ready, right? And so you go and you'll see one house, and maybe it's a spec home. And this builder poured his heart and soul into it, maybe overbuilt it a little bit, but man, I tell you what, the quality is really good. And there's that home. And then there's this other home that you're trying to build or trying to buy, and that one's more of a flip. It wasn't a tear down, it wasn't a spec home, it was a flip. And it looks nice, and it's probably a little bit cheaper and maybe fits in your budget, but then you start looking closely. And it's not built correctly, and you realize that you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to take it down to the studs because they didn't do the wiring right, the plumbing is not right, and it might look good from the outside, but you get in there and you realize the problems go way deeper than what looks like on the walls, right? Yeah. The cover of the book does not give you a good indication of what the book is. That's what Texas was. So Texas, from the outside looking in, was like, boy, they were a couple of snaps away from being an undefeated team, and boy, they've recruited really well. And then you go in there and you actually look what was under the hood, and you look what was going on with the boosters, and you look what was leaving their program as far as graduation, like their quarterback, Sam Ellinger, and the guys that they were having to run off in order to build back this culture of what he wants. And you have to understand, he had to go way deeper before he's going to build back up. This is one of those areas. I know no one likes 5 losses at Texas. I get it. And this is a program that should be great and will be great. But there's an element here of that you got to tear it way back down to the studs in order to build something back up that has staying power, that's going to be great at the top end, rather than window dressing and Band-Aids.
Hey, by the way, and I'll throw another one out there. It's not a big program, but Chip Kelly, they all want to run him out of UCLA. They're now bowl eligible. When Chip Kelly came to UCLA, to your point, he had to so rebuild UCLA. They got down to 55 scholarship players.
That's right.
And beat USC that had 85 in a game in which he played 13 freshmen. He had to literally just start over.
Sometimes you've got to decimate the program in order to build it back in the right fashion.
And the problem is Texas has a 2-3 year rebuild image. They may be a longer rebuild than that.
Well, they do fall into the category that at any given moment, you're 3 years away from a playoff berth.
Okay, that's fair.
Because of the recruiting base, because it's such a rich recruiting base. Right. I think that it will turn around at some point, but you made a great point. Even Nick Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe his first year at Alabama.
And then second year got rolled by Utah in the Sugar Bowl.
And then the third year he goes on to win a national championship.
All right, let me throw this at you, Klatt. Right now, I like what we did.
So there's a lot of agreeing going on.
Okay, hold on.
It's very cordial right now. Joy is I think
making
that you like
nervous.
this. Do you like it when there's more?
I mean,
okay.
Look, when two minds get together and you're on the same page, that's
Bernie
fine.
Sanders and Elon Musk may disagree mostly, but you see this week, but they may have something they agree on occasionally. All right, so I can't figure out Bitcoin. That's another show entirely.
Which one of you is Bernie and which one is Elon?
Please, God, I'm Elon.
Probably. All right, let me throw one more thing I want to hit here. Okay, here it is. So I hear a lot of things about what is a great job.
Yeah. Coaching, you mean?
Miami, that is a great job. And I think to myself, well, you haven't been good in 20 years. A bunch of coaches that have won everywhere are going there, and they're all failing quickly. And I don't think the administration's all in. And I hear this about USC, and I do think USC is better than Miami. But in the history of USC, McKay was good left for the NFL. Robinson good left for the NFL. Pete Carroll good left for the NFL. It's not one of these paternal Bobby Bowden guys stay forever job. It feels very transient to me. So I just want you to tell me if Alabama's a 10 as the best job in the country and whoever's number one, where is Miami and USC right now in your eyes? Administration, money, commitment, conference, everything.
I would put USC very close to the top. I think it's a top 5 job in college football.
Wow.
Miami, maybe a top 20 job. Maybe. It's really difficult in Miami because I think that the competition in your recruiting footprint is more difficult. And you don't even play on campus. They don't have what they used to have with the old Orange Bowl, which was their identity.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bad stadium, but it's our bad stadium.
Liked it.
And we played them there in 2005, the John Beeson, Merriweather team. Like
it fit their program
100%, and it was difficult to play there. Very difficult to play there. Now, you go and it's like, is it filled up? Kind of, maybe. I think that they've lost kind of the tackiness to their history through that stadium, and I think that's tough to overcome. Whereas USC, I still believe that USC, because of their recruiting footprint and because of the fact that if they are good, they own this coast.
They do.
The entire coast. You can't say that about Miami. You can't even say if they're good that they own their state. Right, because of Florida and Florida State and what goes on there. And by the way, UCF is about to be a quote-unquote Power 5 school in the Big 12. So I would put USC near the top, in the top 5 in the country. Miami might be a top 20 job. I'm not sure.
All right, one more thing. The state of Oklahoma thinks I don't like him, and I'll say it again. Oklahoma State's the most underrated team in the country because we're paying attention to Cincinnati and Notre Dame. We're not paying attention to Oklahoma State. Just my take.
They're pretty good.
They're pretty good. So I think Iowa State's going to beat Oklahoma this weekend.
Wow.
That's my takeaway. But a bigger issue is the future of the program. Lincoln Riley, rumors to LSU. I don't buy him at all. Am I naive?
I don't think you're naive. I don't buy them either. I know Lincoln fairly well in terms of, broadcaster-coach relationship. I've done a lot of his games. He is a loyal guy. He is a guy that understands that this opportunity was given to him, and maybe he deserved it, maybe he didn't when Bob stepped down, and all of a sudden he's the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. This is one of the most storied and prestigious programs in the history of college football. I think that he feels an obligation to get them back to a point where they're winning national championships. I think Bob is still one of his great mentors, and Bob turned down opportunity after opportunity over the 20 years that he was at Oklahoma, and I think Lincoln will probably do the same. You go to LSU, what does that move do to you except start your clock to get fired, which is what every coach there has gotten, which is fired whether they won a national title or not. At Oklahoma, this is a program where you can win a national title and you can be there for 20 years. You can be the Paterno Bowden-style coach at Oklahoma. I don't think you can do that at LSU.
No, I think LSU is a pressure cooker. Also, you know how the Pittsburgh Steelers have a reputation is they've only had like 3 coaches or something, you know? And Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Tomlin. Oklahoma's a little bit like that.
A bit.
Bud Wilkerson, Barry Switzer, Stoops, Lincoln Riley. Now, they had John Blake for about an hour.
That's right.
Very quick. He was a great recruiter.
I think Fairbanks for about 30 minutes as well, if I'm not mistaken.
But by and large, Oklahoma is loyal to their coaches. They give you down years. It's a top 5 program. Why in the world would I? That's a classic example of people don't try to get happier than happy. If you coach Oklahoma, unless you go to the pros, there's no other job you should take.
Not if it fits, and it certainly fits there. I mean, Lincoln.
A lot of land there. You can get a big horse farm, ostrich farm. I mean, it's all L.A. You get a little condo, and it costs you about $9 million.
Estate. Yeah, there you go.
Oklahoma, all these coaches in Oklahoma, they have these beautiful ranches. It's beautiful out there.
I'd like a ranch. That would be nice.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, like a Yellowstone ranch.
Yeah,
that would be
nice. Can you see me on horses?
No, I can't actually at all.
Out there literally making things happen.
I can't at all,
actually.
Steering
cattle into the field.
The last thing I think of when I think Colin Cowherd is every man.
You know, I take these shots with a smile.
I mean, you said your dentist was, like, even you were annoyed with you in the dentist chair.
I put on working gloves. Well, I moved them from one end of the garage to the other, but I've touched working gloves on more than one occasion. All right.
I look at them longingly and think to myself,
what could be?
What could be?
All right, Iowa State, Oklahoma. We only put great games on. I'm taking the Cyclones, who are a little better defensively. You don't think of Iowa State as having NFL defensive guys on the front. I think they have a couple interesting players.
Mike Rose is an interesting guy, and they've had success in the past against this Oklahoma team. So
there you go. Good seeing you, buddy.
You too.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.